All right, folks, welcome back to the Bad Audio Private Pilot Airman Knowledge Test Prep Series, back with how to make sense of VORs on the FAA Private Pilot Airman Knowledge Test. There we go. Here's a breakdown of what a VOR head looks like and what you're going to be looking for. Thing number one that you're going to be picking out for the most part is going to be the OBS setting up here at the top. And it's that yellow arrow that points to your OBS. Next up is your to from indicator, which you'll find over here in a lot of cases, and this arrow will flip and it'll point the other way if it's a to, and it'll have a little off if it's not indicating. And then you have your CDI, your course deviation indicator. That's that needle that swings one way or the other in the center to show you how far off course you are. And finally, there's the OBS selector knob, which on the actual test doesn't do anything for you, but it's how you actually set your OBS at the top. On the VOR heads that you're going to find on the FAA tests, they have a slightly confusing to from indicator. On the left, we've got a VOR with a to indication. On the right, we've got a from indication. Biggest thing to look out for is that little arrow. To and from are always shown, but the arrow points to which one of them is active. And that makes it slightly confusing, especially if you're in a situation like this where the needle actually covers the from. You might run into circumstances where you've got no to or from indication, but you get a little confused, a little stressed out, and it kind of looks like that arrow might be hiding under the needle. I promise you, it's not. You can pick out the arrow more often than you think. So here are the steps that you're going to take to determine your position using that VOR head. You start by drawing your VOR, identify your OBS, figure out if it's giving you a to, from, or no indication. If it's a to, you're going to convert it to a from. If there's none, we're going to talk about what that does. Then you're going to draw the appropriate radial on your VOR diagram, and then you're going to identify how much the CDI is deflected, given that each dot is 2 degrees on these. Then you're going to draw your aircraft position based on that radial and the deflection from the CDI. So up first, you draw your VOR. You can just do a freaking dot or a hexagon. You don't even need the little compass rose thingy. Frankly, you can just keep it as one dot, and you can just kind of estimate which way it's going. For what I'm looking for a lot of these, I'm just looking for you to give me an idea of where you're going to be. Because when you go and prep and get used to this, you can then look at the VORs on the test, and you know roughly where stuff is going to be, because there are only 9 VOR heads that they might use on the whole test. So if you just know where most of them generally point in the process of how to get where they're generally pointed, that can give you a good starting point. So your next step is going to be to identify your OBS selection. Again, it's that yellow arrow that points at the OBS selection at the top. In this case, it's pointed at the line that corresponds with 2-1, which is 210 degrees. And VORs are all in magnetic, so that's 210 degrees magnetic. So that is our OBS setting for this one. As we continue, that next step is going to be to pick out that to or from indication. In our case, we've got a 2102 indication. So in our case, we have something else to mess around with. Since this is a to indication, we need to flip this to a from to make a little bit more sense of it. Eventually you get to a point where you just totally understand and you basically conflate the two, 2102 and 030 from, and you just kind of know. Easiest way to do that for you guys is just to look at the very bottom of the VOR head. Whatever number is at the very bottom is your reciprocal heading. So that's a 030, and anytime you flip to the reciprocal, you change it from a to a from. So in this case, we're looking at a 030 from in terms of the radial that we're going to draw. So now it's time to actually draw that radial. So take your VOR that you drew. If it's on an actual sectional chart and you're plotting a course, you're going to find your compass rose for real, and you're going to make it a point to very carefully draw that line straight through there. If you're just getting an idea before you go into the testing supplement, then you can just keep it simple and go, okay, it's about, mostly to the up and right or mostly to the down and left. Then you're going to take a look at your CDI deflection. In this case, the CDI is deflected to the right, I'd say about 4 degrees, and you could make an argument for 3.5. We're just going to simplify it. We're just going to call it 4 because it's 2 dots to the right. So again, it's deflected to the right. For these practice test question versions of these, right, on the FAA test, the best way to think about them is assume that your airplane is in the center of the VOR and that it is pointed in the direction of your OBS setting. So pretend you're pointed on a 210 heading, and then everything is going to make sense. So what I want you to do, pay attention to the direction that needle was deflected. In this case, to the right. I want you to literally pick your right hand up off of the table. I'm so serious about this. Pick it up and hold it up. Then I want you to twist your paper until you are pointed the direction of your OBS, right? Imagine you are sitting in the airplane, pointed that heading on the OBS. So if you're working with a VOR that's got numbers, you should be pointed at the number, the number at the top of the VOR should be your OBS setting. In this case, that 210. Now that you're still holding your right hand up and you've properly twisted your paper, this is where it actually gets fairly easy because you just go, okay, my hand is the course. The course is over to my right. So I'm going to draw my airplane to the left of that line, just like that. So your airplane gets drawn by whatever hand you've got left. Now I realize most of you are going to be right-handed or whatever it is, so it might be a real ugly airplane, but that's not the point. It's just to get the idea of what's going on. Another way to visualize it is that you are the dot in the center and that needle is your course. So if you just pretend that the VOR is right at the top on that OBS and that needle is showing you where the course is, that's how I like to visualize it. So now let's look at a couple of examples. In this one, the VOR is tuned to the Elizabeth City VOR DME station. It's at figure 20, area 3. And the aircraft is positioned over Shawboro, a small town 3 nautical miles west of Currituck County Regional Airport, Oscar November X-ray. Which VOR indication is correct? Number 8, number 2, or number 5? So at that point, you flip to all your VORs and you flip to this page. I'm going to blow it up a little bit for you guys, because I know if I don't, you're going to be real mad because that's way too small. But we have the Elizabeth City VOR down here, and our town of Shawboro is up here. You can read it there, and that little circle next to the thingy, next to the title of the town, that is where the town actually is. Don't get caught out trying to draw your line straight to the middle of the text. You're drawing it to the center of that itty-bitty circle right there. I know, it's meticulous. So then you go and find your VOR, and you draw your line. We call this a swag, a scientific, wildly approximate guess. Take your swag before you even look at any of the VORs on the page. Get an idea of the reading that you expect to have before you go in and try to make sense of it. On a VOR compass rose, each of these longer lines is 10 degrees. So from here to here is 10 degrees. So if we look, there's 0, 10, 20, 30. Each of these smaller lines in here is 5 degrees. So that's 30, that's 35 right there. In this case, we're a little bit to the right of the 30 line. So I'd say that's maybe 031 in this case. That means that we are looking for approximately a 031 from, because we're on the 031 radial of the Elizabeth City VOR, or another acceptable reading would be a 2112. Now, since all the VORs in the testing supplement, I'll just tell you right now, all 9 of them have an OBS setting of either 210 or 030. If we are perfectly on, then we're looking for one with no needle deflection. We'll get to one later that makes me incredibly angry, and I hope you'll understand why when you see it. So here are our possible answers. And, hey look, a VOR head that indicates 2102. If we remember from our last slide, we were looking for either a 030 or so from, or a 2102. Since all of these have no needle deflection, we were pretty gosh darn close. to that 030. So we're going to roll with it. In this case, we've got a 2102, which means that our answer comes out to be 5. Example question number 2 is a little bit on the tougher side. I did warn you that there are going to be some weird ones. This is one of those weird ones. The VOR is tuned to the bottom vortex, which is figure 3, area 20, which is area 3 in figure 24, and the aircraft is positioned over the town of Sulphur Springs, area 5 in figure 24. Which VOR indication is correct? 8, 7, or 1? Again, we are going to ignore the VOR heads at first and move on. Just like last time, we're going to start by finding our target. In this case, it's going to be that town of Sulphur Springs, not the airport. So this is the Sulphur Springs Airport. This is the densely populated area that's right next to the label Sulphur Springs. We can assume that's the town of Sulphur Springs. In this case, it's actually not going to matter much. So if you make a mistake on this one, the consequences are a little bit smaller than on other ones. Our next step is going to be finding our VOR. I warned you this was a weird one. It also makes me mad. VOR is literally half off the page. You're big kids, you can figure it out. Okay, now that we've identified both of those things, we're going to take our swag. It looks like we're on about the 120 radial of the bottom vortex. So we're looking for a VOR that indicates 120 from or 3002. Should be fairly simple, right? But guess what? None of the VOR options that we have, and in fact, none of the VORs in the testing supplement even have that indication. What I want you to notice, though, is that if you look at the sides of each VOR, so we've got the tops up here, then we've got the sides over here. 120 is on the side of both of them. So this one is actually fairly straightforward. We know that we can't be on a perfect 0302. We know that we can't be on a perfect 2102 or even close to it. We are exactly perpendicular to the course that we've set on the OBS, which means, guess what? If there is no to or from indication and the needle is at full deflection, the OBS is set perpendicular to the actual radial. The important thing to understand as well is that, again, imagine you are sitting in the middle of this VOR head pointed to the top at that OBS setting. The needle is deflected in the direction of the VOR, so way off to the left. So we've got no to from, and our needle is deflected to the left, and we're pointed on a 030. Which means that the VOR is off to our left. This is what we're after here. So, again, since we are over the town of Sulphur Springs, pointed roughly this way, VOR off to our left, hey, that's it. This one's nice and easy because it's the only one with no to or from and full deflection. So in this case, our answer is 7. Bam. All right, let's keep going. Last one. This one really gets my goat. This one makes me want to do violence. I really, 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 really hate this one because it's very picky. The VOR is tuned to the Jamestown VOR, which is Area 4 in Figure 26. The aircraft is positioned over the Cooperstown Airport, not the town of Cooperstown, the Cooperstown Airport, which is Area 2 in Figure 26. Which VOR indication is correct? Again, not even going to look at the VORs yet. One more time, find our target. Bam, there's the Cooperstown Airport. The airport, not the town. Then we find our VOR, in this case, the Jamestown VOR, way down here. And you'll notice that circle doesn't seem centered on the airport. That's because it's not. Be careful. If a VOR is on an airport, you are looking for the little dot somewhere on that airport depiction. You don't just get to draw it to the center of the airport. That can actually throw you off pretty meaningfully. Next up, take a swag. In my heart, that really looks like a 030 from. It really looks like a 030 from. Maybe a perfect 030 from is a little bit further south of there, but man, it is close. I will concede just barely. The FAA seems to think it's on the 028. I will concede that it is maybe just barely 029. So we are looking for either a 029er from or a 209er to. Obviously, we don't have that, so we are looking for something a little bit different. Here are our possible answers. We got something kind of close, but every single one of these has a needle deflection. So if we get really picky and make that needle really thin and nail it on the 030, oh no, it's just a little bit south of where we want to be, which means that we have to be north of the course. If we are exactly centered over the Cooperstown Airport, we are up here just barely north of the course. If we take that VOR head and go ahead and do a little bit of twisting and check it out, find out which VOR fits best. And in the end, VOR 4, if we center it up on that airport, just like we have before, that's the only one where the needle is deflected in the proper direction. In this case, with a 2102, which agrees with about what we were looking for. It's one of those that's just very frustrating. No way around it. I'm sorry. So that brings us to the end. Our answer is VOR number 4.